In 1989, Lonesome Dove gave us one of the greatest Western stories ever told, a journey of loyalty, loss, and brotherhood across a harsh frontier. But after the final ride, the cast's real lives became far more unpredictable than the script itself. Some rose higher than ever, others faded into silence, and some were lost too soon. Let's go back and see how much has truly changed by 2026. Robert Duvall as Augustus Gus McCrae. The easygoing, cigar-smoking father figure with a sharp sense of humor and a warm, wandering spirit in Lonesome Dove is the kind of man you remember long after the story ends. Born on January 5, 1931, Duvall was 58 years old when he brought Augustus McCrae to life in Lonesome Dove, 1989. His portrayal turned Gus into one of the most iconic Western characters ever written, quietly reshaping Duvall's career into that of a master of emotional storytelling without excess. In 2026, Robert Duvall is 95 years old, living a quiet and deeply private life on his Virginia estate, alongside his fourth wife, Luciana Pedraza, whom he married in 2005. The couple shares no children, and their days are shaped by calm routines far removed from Hollywood, with Duvall spending most of his time listening to music, practicing tango, and enjoying the slow rhythm of rural life. His health has noticeably declined in recent years, especially after 2022, with limited mobility and age-related weakness forcing him to step away almost completely from acting. Behind this peaceful present, Duvall's later years have also carried quiet emotional weight. Despite his legendary status in films like The Godfather and his Oscar-winning performance in Tender Mercies, 1983, he has often spoken about the loneliness that comes with aging outside the spotlight. In interviews from earlier years, he hinted at the difficulty of watching Hollywood evolve while gradually stepping away from it himself. Yet even as his public life faded, his reputation only grew stronger, with Gus McCrae remaining one of the most beloved characters in television history. Robert Urich as Jake Spoon. A charming drifter with a troubled conscience and an unpredictable moral compass, Jake Spoon in Lonesome Dove is the kind of man whose arrival always shifts the emotional balance of the story. Born on December 19, 1946, Robert Urich was 43 years old when he played Jake Spoon in Lonesome Dove, 1989, and his performance brought a mix of charisma and tragic instability that made the character both likable and deeply flawed. That role became one of the defining television performances of his career, showcasing his ability to blend charm with emotional fragility. Robert Urich passed away on April 16, 2002, at the age of 55 in California after a long and painful battle with synovial sarcoma, a rare and aggressive form of soft tissue cancer. Before his illness, he was one of America's most beloved television actors, known for leading roles in Vega Dollars and Spencer, For Hire, which earned him an Emmy Award and a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. He was married for 27 years to actress Heather Menzies, and together they raised 3 adopted children in a deeply devoted family life that remained strong even during his illness. After his diagnosis in 1996, Urich endured multiple surgeries, intensive chemotherapy, and radiation treatments that severely weakened his body, yet he continued working in television for as long as he physically could. Even in his final years, he remained active in fundraising and cancer awareness efforts, turning his personal struggle into advocacy. His passing marked the end of a respected career defined not only by leading man roles, but also by extraordinary resilience, with Jake Spoon remaining one of his most memorable performances. Tommy Lee Jones as Woodrow F. Call, the cold, disciplined Texas Ranger captain with an unshakable sense of duty and a silent, commanding presence in Lonesome Dove, is the kind of man defined more by restraint than words. Born on September 15, 1946, Jones was 43 years old when he portrayed Woodrow F. Call in Lonesome Dove, 1989. His role that gave the miniseries its structure, tension, and emotional weight. elevating Jones into one of Hollywood's most respected dramatic actors. In 2026, Tommy Lee Jones is 80 years old and living a quiet, private life with his third wife, Dawn Laurel, on his expansive ranch in Texas. He has two adult children from previous relationships, and much of his time is now spent away from Hollywood, focused on solitude, horse riding, and maintaining a slow, disciplined rural lifestyle. Years of physically demanding roles, especially horseback riding in Western films, have left him with chronic joint pain and reduced mobility, which has gradually pushed him toward a more isolated and reflective way of living. But beneath his calm exterior lies a career marked by both triumph and personal cost. Jones reached global fame through The Fugitive, 1993, which earned him an Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor and later solidified his place in pop culture through Men in Black. However, behind the success, he has often been described as intensely private and emotionally reserved, struggling with the pressures of Hollywood's changing pace. His reputation for being difficult in interviews and selective with roles reflects a man who never fully embraced fame, choosing instead a life of distance and control. Today, his legacy as Woodrow Call remains one of the most iconic portrayals of duty and silence in television history. Danny Glover as Joshua Dietz. A quiet, deeply loyal tracker whose presence in Lonesome Dove felt almost invisible but impossible to ignore, Joshua Dietz moved through the story with calm precision, sharp instincts, and a silent strength that often spoke louder than words. Born on July 22, 1946, Glover was 43 years old when he portrayed Dietz in Lonesome Dove, 1989, and his performance gave the character an emotional weight that grounded the harshness of the frontier. That role became one of the most quietly powerful parts of the miniseries, shaping Glover's reputation as an actor who could carry deep emotion without ever raising his voice. In 2026, Danny Glover is 80 years old and living a more private life after his divorce from Eliane Cavallero in 2022. He now spends most of his time with his daughter and grandchildren, staying away from Hollywood's spotlight. His health has become increasingly fragile due to a long history of epilepsy and severe spinal degeneration, making movement difficult and limiting his ability to work. Chronic pain and mobility issues have forced him into retirement from physically demanding roles, leaving him in a quieter, more reflective phase of life. Even so, Glover's legacy remains powerful and far-reaching. He became a global icon through Lethal Weapon, where Roger Murtaugh made him a household name, and later received the Jean Hersholt Humanitarian Award in 2022 for his humanitarian work. In recent years, emotional strain from aging, health decline, and personal losses has shaped a more subdued life away from the screen. Yet Joshua Dietz still stands as one of his most haunting performances, a role that captured his rare ability to express humanity, dignity, and resilience in silence. D.B. Sweeney as Dish Boggett. Among the younger cowboys riding through the harsh world of Lonesome Dove, Dish Boggett stands out as the quiet, uncertain heart of the group, a man still learning what courage and love really cost in a world built on loss. Born on November 14, 1961, Sweeney was 28 years old when he played Dish Boggett in Lonesome Dove, 1989, and his performance brought a fragile emotional softness that contrasted sharply with the hardened men around him. That role became one of his most memorable early appearances, quietly shaping his identity as an actor capable of emotional subtlety rather than spectacle. In 2026, D.B. Sweeney is 65 years old and living a stable family life with his wife Ashley Vachon, whom he married in 2000. The couple has 2 children and has remained together for decades, building a private life far from Hollywood instability. Over time, however, his career gradually lost momentum, shifting away from leading roles into smaller supporting work and voice acting in documentaries and animated projects. Financial pressure during industry downturns, combined with increasing competition, added long-term stress. While his health has begun to show early signs of cardiovascular strain, requiring careful medical monitoring and lifestyle control. Despite stepping away from mainstream attention, Sweeney's early work continues to define his legacy. He remains best known for 8 Men Out, 1988, where he played Shoeless Joe Jackson, and later voice performances such as Disney's Dinosaur. His journey reflects a quieter Hollywood story, one of steady work, fading spotlight, and enduring presence in a handful of roles that still resonate with audiences. Diane Lane, as Lorena Wood. A young saloon girl caught between innocence and survival, Lorena Wood in Lonesome Dove carried a fragile beauty and emotional vulnerability that made her one of the most heartbreaking figures in the story. Born on January 22, 1965, Diane Lane was 24 years old when she played Lorena Wood in Lonesome Dove, 1989, and her performance brought a raw emotional depth that helped define the miniseries' human side. The role became an early turning point in her career, revealing a dramatic sensitivity that would follow her for decades. In 2026, Diane Lane is 61 years old and living a quiet, independent life after 2 high-profile marriages and divorces, first with Christopher Lambert and later with Josh Brolin in 2013. She remains close to her daughter, Eleanor Lambert, who has become her emotional anchor in later years. While her physical health is stable thanks to a disciplined lifestyle, she has faced ongoing emotional pressure tied to aging in Hollywood and the shrinking space for women her age in leading roles. These challenges have led to periods of anxiety and loneliness, which she manages through a slower, more balanced routine focused on wellness and personal stability. Despite these struggles, Lane continues to maintain a respected and enduring career. She earned an Academy Award nomination for Unfaithful, 2002, and later reached a new generation of audiences as Martha Kent in the DC Universe. In recent years, she has shifted toward selective roles and personal causes, especially environmental work that gives her a sense of grounding beyond acting. Lorena Wood remains one of her earliest defining performances, a fragile yet powerful portrait of survival and emotional pain that still resonates with audiences today. Ricky Schroeder, as Newt Dobbs. A child suddenly forced into adulthood too early, Newt Dobbs in Lonesome Dove carries the emotional weight of innocence breaking under the pressure of a brutal frontier, where every lesson comes at a personal cost. Born on April 13, 1970, Schroeder was 19 years old when he portrayed Newt Dobbs in Lonesome Dove, 1989, and his performance became one of the most emotionally fragile threads in the entire miniseries. The role marked a pivotal moment in his transition from child star to adult actor, defined by sensitivity rather than spectacle. In 2026, Ricky Schroeder is 56 years old and living a life marked by isolation after a turbulent personal history. Following a 24-year marriage to Andrea Bernard that ended in divorce in 2016, he became estranged from his children and has not rebuilt a stable family life. His public downfall escalated after his 2019 arrest related to domestic violence allegations, which led to widespread industry rejection and a near-complete collapse of his acting career. Since then, he has largely withdrawn from public life, spending years in psychological treatment to manage severe depression, paranoia, and emotional instability. Once one of Hollywood's most promising child actors, Schroeder rose to fame with a Golden Globe win at just 9 years old for The Champ, 1979, before later appearing in series such as NYPD Blue. But his later years stand in stark contrast to that early promise, shaped instead by legal troubles, emotional breakdowns, and professional isolation. Today, his story is often remembered as a cautionary tale of early fame where success arrived too soon and stability never fully followed. Chris Cooper, as July Johnson. A man defined by silence, loyalty, and the weight of personal tragedy, July Johnson in Lonesome Dove is the kind of husband and father whose emotions are never spoken loudly, but always deeply felt beneath the surface. Born on July 9, 1951, Cooper was 38 years old when he portrayed July Johnson in Lonesome Dove, 1989, and his performance gave the character a quiet, emotional complexity that stood apart in the ensemble. That role became an early foundation in his career, revealing his ability to turn restrained grief into powerful storytelling. In 2026, Chris Cooper is 75 years old and still living with his wife, Diane Lane, whom he married in 1983. Their relationship has endured decades of shared strength, especially after the devastating loss of their only son in 2005, who died following complications related to a cerebral condition. That tragedy reshaped their entire life, leaving behind a permanent emotional wound that never fully healed. Over the years, they have leaned on each other for stability, channeling their grief into purpose through charity work focused on children with disabilities. As he has aged, Cooper has also faced increasing health challenges, including hypertension and early heart-related conditions that have forced him to slow down his acting workload. He now mostly appears in smaller roles and occasional guest performances, while dedicating more time to the foundation created in his son's memory. His career reached its highest recognition with an Academy Award and Golden Globe for Adaptation, 2002, but his portrayal of July Johnson remains one of his most quietly devastating performances. Angelica Houston as Clara Allen. It is in the quiet strength of Clara Allen, the woman who waited a lifetime in Lonesome Dove, that you feel both love and resignation woven into every glance and silence she carries. Born on July 8, 1951, Houston was 38 years old when she portrayed Clara Allen in Lonesome Dove, 1989, and her performance gave the character a haunting emotional gravity that anchored the story's deepest romantic tension. That role became one of the defining points of her career, shaping her image as an actress capable of turning restraint and pain into something unforgettable on screen. In 2026, Angelica Houston is 75 years old and living alone after the death of her longtime partner, sculptor Robert Graham, in 2008. She never remarried and has no children, choosing a life of solitude in the years that followed. Over time, that isolation, combined with grief and aging, has led to long-term struggles with anxiety and chronic depression. Physically, she now suffers from severe arthritis, especially in her knees and hands, making movement painful and limiting her ability to stay on set for long productions, which has forced her to step away from most television and film projects in recent years. Despite these challenges, Houston's legacy remains one of the most powerful in Hollywood history. She won the Academy Award for Best Supporting Actress for Prezi's Honor, 1985, and later became iconic to a new generation as Morticia Addams in The Addams Family. Yet behind the elegance and strength of her screen presence lies a quieter reality shaped by loss, solitude, and physical decline. Clara Allen remains one of her most emotionally resonant performances. Barry Tubb as Jasper Fant. Barry Tubb portrayed a young cowboy whose impulsive nature and restless attitude made him feel like someone always chasing the next reckless decision. Born on March 13, 1963, Tubb was 26 years old when he appeared in Lonesome Dove, 1989, and his performance brought a sharp, unpredictable energy that added friction to the group of cowboys traveling across the frontier. Even in a supporting role, he left a strong impression as part of the younger, wilder edge of the story. In 2026, Barry Tubb is 63 years old and living a quiet, highly private life in Texas, far removed from the entertainment industry. He has never publicly shared details about marriage or children, choosing instead to remain almost completely outside the public spotlight. Over time, his physical condition has declined due to long-term damage from years of horseback riding and stunt work, leading to chronic joint and spinal pain that now limits his movement and requires ongoing therapy. These health challenges, combined with legal and financial stress from past industry disputes, have shaped a more withdrawn and isolated lifestyle. Although his career never reached major mainstream fame beyond the 1980s, Tubb is still remembered for his role in Top Gun, 1986, as Wolfman, which gave him brief international recognition. After that peak, his presence in Hollywood gradually faded as he shifted away from acting. Today, Jasper Fant stands as one of his most recognizable early performances. Barry Corbin as Roscoe Brown. Roscoe Brown in Lonesome Dove is remembered as a slightly overwhelmed but good-hearted lawman, someone trying to uphold justice in a world that rarely plays by rules, often stumbling through danger with more honesty than confidence. Born on October 16, 1940, Corbin was 49 years old when he portrayed Roscoe Brown in Lonesome Dove, 1989, and his performance added a grounded human softness that balanced the harsher edges of the story. That role helped cement his reputation as a reliable character actor capable of bringing warmth and realism into even the smallest supporting roles. In 2026, Barry Corbin is 86 years old and living in Texas, surrounded by his children and grandchildren after 2 long-ended marriages. He has 4 children and a large extended family who now form the center of his daily life. His most serious health battle came in 2021, when he was diagnosed with squamous cell carcinoma of the skin affecting his head and neck, requiring complex surgery and radiation therapy that nearly affected his voice. Although the treatment left him physically weakened for a time, he recovered with remarkable resilience and continues to live a quieter but active life for his age. Despite these challenges, Corbin's career legacy remains steady and respected. He earned an Emmy nomination for Northern Exposure and appeared in the Oscar-winning No Country for Old Men, 2007, building a long career as one of Hollywood's most dependable supporting actors. Roscoe Brown remains one of his most memorable roles. Steve Buscemi as Luke. Steve Buscemi appeared in Lonesome Dove as Luke, a restless young outlaw whose unpredictable energy made every scene feel slightly unstable, as if violence could break out at any second. Born on December 13, 1957, Buscemi was 32 years old when he played Luke in Lonesome Dove, 1989, and his performance added a raw, uneasy tension that made the character linger in the background of the story long after he disappeared. That early role quietly hinted at the unusual intensity and emotional unpredictability that would later define his entire career. In 2026, Steve Buscemi is 69 years old and living a more stable life after years marked by deep personal loss and emotional recovery. Following the death of his wife Jo Andres in 2019, he endured a long period of grief and withdrawal before eventually finding happiness again and marrying journalist Karen Ho in 2025. By 2026, the couple lives in New York and is often seen together at public events, marking a calmer and more grounded chapter in his life. He also has a grown son from his first marriage, who remains part of his close but private family circle. Buscemi's later years have been shaped by both trauma and resilience. He has openly dealt with long-term anxiety and PTSD from his time as a firefighter during the 9/11 attacks, an experience that deeply affected his mental health for decades. In 2024, he was also violently assaulted in a random street attack in New York, suffering facial injuries that added another emotional scar to his life. Despite these hardships, he has rebuilt a sense of stability through his new marriage and continues to work selectively in film and television while supporting mental health initiatives for artists in the industry. Luke remains one of his earliest on-screen impressions. David Carpenter as Needle Nelson. Unlike many of his co-stars, David Carpenter built his career almost entirely in the background of Hollywood, appearing as a steady and familiar supporting presence across decades of film and television. Born in the early 1940s, he was in his early 30s when he appeared in Lonesome Dove, 1989, as Needle Nelson, a minor but authentic frontier figure who helped fill out the rugged world of the story. Though his screen time was limited, his performance reflected the grounded realism that ensemble westerns depended on. In 2026, David Carpenter is in his 70s and living a quiet, private life with his wife, far removed from Hollywood attention. He has always kept his personal life out of the public eye, choosing stability and family over industry visibility. Like many longtime character actors, his later years have been shaped more by the slow decline of available roles than by any public controversy. Age-related conditions such as blood pressure and mild glucose issues have also required him to scale back his activity, limiting his work to occasional appearances at most. Even without major fame, Carpenter's career reflects the backbone of Hollywood storytelling. More than 50 supporting roles across film and television, including Gods and Generals, 2003, and Deadwood. He never became a leading name, but his consistency and longevity made him a familiar face across generations of viewers. Needle Nelson remains one of those brief but lasting impressions, a reminder of the countless working actors who quietly hold cinematic worlds together without ever standing at the center of them. Sonny Carl Davis as Bert Borum. In Lonesome Dove, Bert Borum appears as one of those rough-edged, grounded men of the frontier, a working cowboy whose presence adds texture to the dusty, unforgiving world the story builds around its main journey. Born on December 7, 1947, Davis was 38 years old when he portrayed Bert Borum in Lonesome Dove, 1989, and his performance reflected the realism of a seasoned Texas character actor who often brought authenticity to small but meaningful roles. That appearance helped reinforce his identity as a dependable face of independent and regional American cinema. In 2026, Sonny Carl Davis is 75 years old and living a stable family life in Texas with his wife, surrounded by children, grandchildren, and a close-knit independent film community. He has remained deeply connected to low-budget filmmaking, often supporting local productions and continuing to work behind the scenes as both actor and director. However, the modern film industry has made his work increasingly challenging, as streaming platforms and shifting distribution models reduce opportunities for traditional independent cinema, creating ongoing financial and emotional pressure. At the same time, he manages type 2 diabetes and heart-related conditions, requiring strict medical care and a disciplined daily routine. Despite these challenges, Davis is widely respected as a true Texas cinema figure with more than 100 screen credits. He is especially remembered for his role in Bernie, 2011, alongside Jack Black and Matthew McConaughey, where his performance was praised for its natural humor and authenticity. His career reflects a steady commitment to storytelling outside of Hollywood's mainstream spotlight, built on consistency rather than fame. So after revisiting the unforgettable journey of Lonesome Dove, 1989, then and now 2026, we are left with one question. How did a single story of cowboys, loyalty, and loss create such lasting impact on both cinema and the lives of its cast? Decades have passed, faces have changed, and time has taken its toll, but the legacy of Lonesome Dove still rides on. What moment from the cast's journey surprised you the most? If you enjoyed this look back, don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more then and now stories that reveal the hidden lives behind Hollywood's most iconic legends.